There it goes. Sorry. I forget that part.
Okay.
Give me a week off.
Right.
We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Looks like we have an election for open seat.
Yes.
What,
Tom's position has, his term has expired, and so his seat is open, and he is running again, unopposed, for his open seat for another 6-year term.
usually,
That's just an appointment by the mayor.
Yeah.
I've already made that.
We don't have an election. Did we have an election?
There's
Now,
no.
you were willing to do it again, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought, so I think we're okay on that front.
I got the list for the last meeting, we approved it at the last meeting for Tom Ferris at the...
so that's where I was.
Are those appointments? I don't think those are appointments by the mayor, except the very first time, and then it switches to elections for an EDA. My understanding.
Historically, I think the city's always done it that way with the mayor appointing, but we
Yeah.
can take a look at it. Either way, I think Tom's good to go.
That's why I was confused, that's why I just...
Your guys' chance to voice any, like, no confidence kind of stuff if you have.
And you did make that comment earlier in the year about consolidating power with other organizations, so...
I did also suggest maybe we do like either like a lift bridge over,
Yeah, you're
Main
done,
Street or
you're done,
all that.
yeah.
Oh, it's too late, you already pointed him.
Yeah, we can look how that is, it's always been a appointment, I mean, who elects them?
The EDA itself. It's typically how I've done it with other boards.
Oh,
We should look at our rules and just actually find out and confirm the
yeah,
procedure that...
we've never done that before.
Yeah, 'cause in,
I know I was appointed.
yeah, in all times before, and it's always been an appointment by the mayor.
I was just asked if I wanted to renew
Yeah.
when my first term expired, so.
Okay.
Clarify that for us for next one.
Yep.
I can
So-
pull out the revised rules.
All right.
How'd you get here?
Yeah.
Next, we'll go to, if everybody had a chance to look at the previous minutes. So I'll take an approval, a motion to approve them.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. We got our financial report. It's in the packet. Is there any questions for that? If not, we'll take a motion to approve that.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next up is our coordinator's report.
Trucking through. So a few business visits this month. I met with Dean, who owns the Ocean Mix Car Wash. We talked about the Facade improvement program and some other potential grants about improving his parking lot surface. It's pretty rough over there. Byron Auto Sales has finished their acquisition of Casson Car Care, and they just started their internal transition process last week. So I'll check back with them in a couple months to see how that process is going. I took a tour of the Baymont by Wyndham Hotel. They're looking to do some significant renovations. They haven't done any renovations in the 14 years that they've been open, so I think it's time. We're working with them on a deed Main Street revitalization grant due in March, and I'm collaborating with the county on that. Since they are the only hotel in the county, I think it'll make that application stronger. Ready, Set, Learn, they're looking for a new commercial space, so I'm going to send them some options soon as well, but met with them last week. I'm going to skip over the Hamilton project and we'll circle back there, but on the Trail Creek building offer, the subcommittee did meet and determined that the building should be valued at $100,000, and made a counteroffer to give them a $15,000 subsidy, so making the purchase price $85,000, and then that subsidy vested over a period of 5 years with $3,000 increments. They have not come back with a formal response to that counteroffer yet, but I did talk to them on the phone, and they think it looks good. They just want to do a commercial inspection before they get back to us, which they were hoping to do this week. The county has applied for some technical assistance through First Children's Finance, and hoping to assess the county-wide need for child care placements, and so working with them if that application comes through. Did talk with the folks over at Plaza 57. They're offering some incentive to attract an owner-operator for the larger space that's available there. They're willing to pay for 50% of the build-out of a daycare. They're up to $100,000, and so make that a priority to find some folks. There have been some folks that have come through and have pulled out largely because the COVID situation. They just don't want to make that investment and know if they're going to be open as a daycare. On the downtown lots, the EDA Build Back Better grant that we collaborated with Ready on was not successful. Only one project in Minnesota was funded, and it was a Twin Cities cluster around biomedical businesses. So we are now going to move forward on the Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant due in March. I've been pulling together some elements of that application. I did get a call from a local investor on the downtown lots. He owns smoke shops and some other rental units, and so he inquired about the cost of those lots and is looking at some numbers, and I'll follow up with him soon as well. The Downtown Improvement Task Force, we met last week. We ended up changing the date for the St. Patrick's Day event from that Thursday to the Saturday before to align with some other things that are happening in town. The Legion's going to have some bagpipers that day, and there's also a volleyball competition that's going to be in town. The joint application that we submitted with Community Ed to Smith for the community play space / renovation of a downtown space was not successful, but I'm meeting with them on Friday to kind of recalibrate and think about where we go from there. The Southeast Minnesota Transit Committee, they have been successful with some corporate funding with end-of-year solicitations here. I don't know what the final amount was, but lots of health-based businesses like Blue Cross Blue Shield have given them some funding. The Impact Hub, we'll have that later on the agenda. And then on the Vail property, I've done some outreach to some real estate developers and hospitality management companies to have them come look out at the lots. I haven't gotten any responses quite yet. Been playing telephone tag with a few people. But the holidays, of course, are in the way. But thinking in 2022 that it'll be worthwhile to put together an actual RFP and attract some folks to build on the rest of those sites there.
All right.
And then circling back to the Hamilton project, so Tim, Nancy, and I met with the city's public finance advisor from David Drown and Associates, and we did put an offer forward, a response offer to Hamilton's initial offer, which is in your packets here, and they have come back with a response, and so would love to just have that as a discussion item here today. So they initially asked for 10 years of abatement and a rebate at $2.50. They were going to pay $2.55 a square foot, and we were going to rebate $2 back, or they asked for a rebate $2 back. An option agreement on the neighboring 2.5 acres. Yes, and then the 10-year abatement. So we came back with saying that the city would look at a 5-year abatement, capped at $50,000 a year for a total of $250,000 of assistance. For the land purchase and the infrastructure improvements, they had initially asked to waive the special assessments. We came back and said for a flat fee of $200,000, we would sell you the land, and that would include the infrastructure improvements as well. And we were okay with the neighboring option agreement. Their response to that was they still want to do a rebate, so they'll pay the $200,000 up front. They want to come back and have a net purchase price of $100,000. Again, they want the option agreement, and then if the sand companies folks don't exercise their option agreement, they want first right of refusal on that parcel as well. And then on the tax abatement, they are requesting a 7-year abatement as a counter to the 5-year that we put forward with an annual cap of $55,000 a year. So, and just a note that they need to get the county and the school board on as well to get the return that they need to see. So that was a lot of words. So questions?
So they're willing to pay the $200,000 up front, and they want a rebate.
Yes.
Half of it back.
I just want to note, so you've got 2 pages there, you've kind of got what our letter to them was in response to their initial offer. They were here and they presented to the EDA, and then they also presented to the council in December, speaking with Robert and with Nancy, and I think with our offer, we wanted to make it very clear where we were at and try to make it as clean of a negotiation as possible. Some of the things they initially asked for seemed kind of clumsy, and the biggest concern for us is to make sure that the infrastructure costs are paid for, because we know that there's gonna be substantial infrastructure costs. In his response, he talks about, the city getting a return on purchase price. That isn't really accurate, because we're gonna have a project that we have to pay for. So, my goal is definitely to have our infrastructure paid for by the developers. And that's kind of what we came up with that number. We think the project out there will cost between $800,000 and $1 million potentially to put the road infrastructure in. Now, that means that we'll have 5 usable lots, but just breaking it down, obviously, hopefully it comes in lower than that, after it's bid out, but just based on our experience last year with some of the projects we bid out. So that's kind of where we came up with our offer. And now, I appreciate they're willing to negotiate and move a little bit, but I think that's what we want today, is just to see if there's questions you guys have or suggestions you have on what you think was, in the fullness of time, we'll bring any recommendations to the council, so.
So, on their letter they sent back, they're not asking to waive the whack and sack or the parkland fees?
I think they still are asking for.
I think that's something they're kind of,
offered that.
that's something that they're just assuming to a certain degree, yeah.
That we agreed on.
And parkland dedication, that is part of the reason the city bought that property was, so I'm not as concerned about the actual parkland component, partially because, 2.5 acres, parkland fees it's a negligible amount of money. The whack and sack, that is something that we're not as thrilled about. However, we look at it being able to recoup those costs through the additional customer base.
Mm-hmm.
Of having 48 new customers in an apartment complex between 47 apartments, and then the residence itself or the business itself with bathrooms or whatever, that we would recoup some of those costs. And part of it is that we know that the council set this as a priority last year, is multifamily housing, so.
So right now where we're at is their request would require, so we would rebate them back $100,000 in their request.
Mm-hmm.
And then so then I guess like the second part is, that's kind of I feel like the big item is the infrastructure cost. So I guess I don't see in here, and I don't think we have the original letter in here from them, but because were they also asking us to then pay for the infrastructure cost?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so then we would pay the infrastructure cost, which is potentially $1 million. Rebate them back the $100,000 and then do,
So they're gonna basically pay in half of the infrastructure,
so
that
yeah.
$100,000.
Well, because the infrastructure cost would be between all of the lots in there though.
Mm-hmm.
So their part would be $200,000 on this lot, so they're basically paying half their pieces on I guess if you want to count it that way. With
Yeah, and that's what their offer is.
free land.
Yeah, their offer is basically to pay for half of it. I think, for me, I look at this, they're coming back and asking for 7 instead of 5, and the tax abatement part is the part that I think is more negotiable.
Sure.
Whereas I don't know that the land price is necessarily as negotiable. They're willing to pay the $200,000 up front, right? So it's not that they don't have the cash, they're just trying to look at their rate of return in the fullness of time. So, to me, I would rather extend the tax abatement than, we're gonna be doing deferred assessments on the other 4 lots, and we're gonna be assessing that $200,000 each one of those as well to pay for this infrastructure. So, to me, I think that's a number that I see as less negotiated, whereas the tax abatement is for tax revenue that we wouldn't have if they didn't build. So, it's a little bit more, especially if we kind of market it as if we did like maybe 5 years up front and 5 years pay-as-you-go or something like that, or even a 10 years as a pay-as-you-go. I don't know, but it's just one of those options possibly.
Because how much did we estimate the tax revenue would be?
Robert, you've got those numbers, I think it was,
$45,000 a year
For city tax.
for city, just city tax.
For the city.
And this whole tax was 104 something.
Sure.
So what's our, has anybody talked to the county or the school district? I mean,
I think those meetings are scheduled for this month, so, at their board meetings in January, so.
Yep, so we'll go to the county on the fourth Tuesday. On the second Tuesday, they're updating their business subsidy language, so we'll be the first project in. And I've had some side conversations. It sounds like they're at least amenable to a shorter term. So, starting point. I don't know where the school sits, so.
so what's your advice there, Tim or Robert?
Well, I mean, I guess the question we had for you today is if you just had any feedback.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is gonna be an ongoing negotiation, and it's possible we come back and say, no, this is our offer, and they may still go for it. They're still looking at a rate of return over 6% on their investment,
Mhm.
so, I mean, and obviously, if they're interested, I mean, from my perspective, if they're interested in taking an option on 2 other parcels in the subdivision, I mean, there's definitely, they have a substantial amount of interest in this, project. As I said, I'm more flexible on maybe on something where we take a look at the tax abatement, because as I said, I know that that's not revenue we would have if it would
Right.
just be a field.
Mhm.
So, to me, there's some flexibility there, whereas I know that the council's priority has always been that development pays for development, and I think that's really important. And that's something that we've, Robert's made clear to Mr. Nolander over there, is that's really, it's not that we're looking to make money on the property sale. We're not gonna make money on it.
Nope.
That wasn't the intention. It's to spur some additional, multifamily housing and also provide for the parkland opportunities in Lions Park
It's
expansion.
gonna be an investment in our future.
It is. Part of it, the other way I look at it, I try to think of the positives. Let's say we have an apartment complex that's now occupied, and anyone who's serving on council or is cognizant, LGA has another component. Population growth drives some revenue for the city as well. So, we're looking at all these other options for commercial and opportunities for growth in our, restaurant or hospitality industry, and population growth just drives all of that.
Yes.
So, to me, I think, we're gonna come back and, based on what the council tells us that they feel is appropriate, we'll come back and say, here's what we think is possible, and if they're not interested in that, then, they'll have to walk away, and that's fine, because there'll be somebody else who will eventually want to develop, and,
Mhm.
but at the same time, they are very interested, and they've had some successful projects, as you guys have seen over in Byron. I think, Robert, you told me, what was Byron's terms originally there?
Byron did 5 years upfront abatement payment, and then 5 years pay as you go.
And they provided,
And they did the rebate on the land.
Right.
Yeah, so they paid effectively $1 a square foot for the land.
so, and part of it is it's a competitive market too
Mhm.
for us. As other cities in this region, so we have to be cognizant of what other cities are providing too.
I am also aware that they have proposals put for another building in Byron, as well as one in Dodge Center as well, so, to keep that in mind.
I think the biggest thing is gonna be what the school's gonna be willing to do. Because if the school says no one only wants to go 10 years, then that kinda sinks the whole thing. Separate their
Maybe
bidding
or
off of
not,
them.
it may not.
Right.
If,
Maybe not. I had a little conversation with Ryan Nolander, and so their initial thought on the rebate was this $200,000 was just for the land purchase. They weren't thinking about the infrastructure as part of this. And so I explained that, and so they were a little bit more amenable to that. And then, I was upfront that schools don't, in general, abate taxes. And he was understanding, and he didn't necessarily say that kills the project for them, but that they have to look a little bit closer at it.
okay.
Usually like the school tax rate is so small compared to the city and the county that it makes a difference, but it's usually not like a deal killer.
Yeah.
But-
It's actually not that different from the county's taxes. County falls around $35,000, and the school is $33,000. And this building comes in at a $5.8 million valuation, so.
Yeah, I guess my personal opinion on it is if it's a difference of if it comes down to the $100,000 rebate thing, making or breaking it. I guess I don't know if I feel like that's make or breaks. It sounds like we'd make that back within 3 years once the taxes come online.
Yeah, but that could be 5 to 10 years.
Right, yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but then it becomes a revenue stream, right? So if that's make or break, I guess that's my opinion. If they're willing to do, I mean, I would just tell them, like, you know, especially if they're wanting options on other two parcels, I just tell them, like, the rebate, the thing to know about the rebate is that's just probably gonna increase the deferred tax assessments on any other parcels you build next time.
Right, we'd have to shift those costs onto the other lots, because they have to be repaid.
Because we still gotta cover the cost of the infrastructure.
So if they, you know, I mean, so if they just wanna pay for it on the next project, like, you know, it's kinda like, it's fine, I guess, but just so they know, like, that's all they're doing is just shifting it to the next thing they have an option on.
Sure.
Well, I don't think we have to tell them that. They have to figure that out themselves.
Well, I mean, I would just tell them, like, this is the reason we're countering on the rebate, right? It's like, if you know, like, if you want the rebate, you know, like, that's gonna be, like, basically, like, it allows us to decrease the costs that are going to get spread on the other lots, you know, on the next project. So, I would just tell them, like, that's, you know, for them, it ends up being kind of, it should be viewed more as, you know, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other, as opposed to a make or break kind of issue. For us, it makes a difference because then we're not paying, you know, like if we have to take out a bond on it or something, you know, like in the meantime to finance the construction, we're at least not paying as much interest on it, but,
Right.
you know, I don't know, that'd be, you know, then if they say, no, we absolutely need it on this parcel, I just tell them, like, you know, it's just gonna have to get pushed to the next lot, and then, you know, they're just pushing it to the next project, which maybe they feel better about, because maybe they have a proven market then on the next.
I mean, I appreciate that, that's good feedback. I mean, that's something I hadn't really considered, because I want to keep them uniform. But you're right, I mean, you'd be taking $100,000, and you'd be spreading it over 4 lots that are left, which 2 of them they'll have options on, so potentially they'd just be pushing, you know, $50,000 of their, you know, cost into additional growth. But, you know, that isn't a bad way of thinking about it either, so.
Right, so, I mean, and then we're potentially assessing interest on those, you know, over time to keep up with our, whatever rate we get on the bond, so then, you know, that 50 they've pushed off, you know, is maybe 60, and I don't know. I just think it's probably less of it shouldn't be a make or break deal.
Sure.
But if they say for whatever reason, I don't know, like Mike Bubani has occasionally said, you know, development is a little bit emotional, more of an emotional decision than anything. And so, if they decide, no, this is the thing we die on, is this 100,000 and it needs to be pushed to the next set of lots, I mean.
Right.
You know, I don't know if that's like the make or break thing for me, because we're just gonna push it to the next one, and we also recoup it, even if we didn't, within a revenue stream within the next 5 years, but I think you're probably recouping it by spreading it on the next set of lots, half of which they have options on. My take anyways.
Any comments from them in conversation if they decide to do the second phase in Byron? You mentioned Dodge Center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would that preclude them from going forward with the project here?
No, I think they want to go forward with the
Okay.
rest of the projects.
So it's not a competition thing so much as in the,
Well, it might be, a little bit, right? It depends on what type of incentives they can get in each place.
Sure.
And it's always easier to do projects in a place you've done a project before, so.
I mean, I think part of it too is to the point that, you know, in Byron offered relatively, what I consider relatively generous terms, but it was for the first building. Now, one of the reasons they didn't just jump on Byron again is because Byron's like, well, we got you in the door, now we want to, and I think that's maybe why our project is still pretty competitive, because this is our first building, which we want to get this going, we want to get it started, we want to get the road built, we have upfront costs. After the road's built, all these things are moving, then the next person who wants to build a building just puts the building in, and then they have to pay whatever they have to pay, but it's a little bit simpler going forward, and that's kind of where I think Byron was like, hey, we'll get you in here, we'll get this started, we'll get it going, and then I don't know, Dodge Center, I mean, it sounded to me like they weren't maybe as quite as competitive, but that was a little different type of project too they were looking at. But, yeah, I mean, we have to look at the region and see where we're kind of going up against too, so.
All right.
All right, well, no, that's helpful, I appreciate that. If you think of something else in the meantime, you know, as Robert mentioned, we're gonna be going to the county, and we're going and seeing what the school's willing to do, if they're willing to do anything. And we'll keep working on this, but we want to just bring you up to speed where it was at, and we'll be letting the council know too, kind of where things are going too, so I appreciate that.
Okay, up next will be your,
Can I ask, is this volleyball tournament a high school volleyball tournament? Or is this
It's a
adult?
Comic Crunch.
Yeah, the jail.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
It's some big one where people are gonna be traveling from all over to come to.
It's called the Comic Crunch usually, and it's a bunch of junior high school age girls. The GO junior volleyball.
Yeah, all the
They have
way
like
from,
several
all the way
hundred
from
teams.
5th grade up.
Yeah, 5th to 12th grade.
Yeah, pretty
There's
much
several hundred teams.
Consumes all the schools.
So it's children?
Yeah.
It's not adult?
Yeah, children,
Okay.
yeah.
okay. Your city administrator's report is in the packet.
Just a couple highlights. I think, Janice, you'll be excited to hear that we are looking at renovating the city liquor store.
I have already heard that. and
Okay.
Kudos, thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know it was something you brought up, maybe a couple months ago, we had that meeting, the Main Street meeting, so, and part and parcel is to our 57 project, which Robert's gonna be talking about a little bit more, but, you know, just fixing that up is something that we felt like would be something we'd take a look at, so hopefully that'll move forward. Including in your packet a little bit further on, you've got some, economic development growth, we've got some annexations that are happening, and, that's pretty exciting for us. But other than that, those are just the things I wanted to highlight, so.
Okay. Go through the approval of the 2022 Business Facade Improvement Program. Everybody get a chance to look at that?
Well, I'd actually like to talk about the next two items at the same time. So we increased in the 2022 budget the line for commercial programs to $17,000. Typically, we put $10,000 towards the business facade program, but then that would leave $7,000 towards the construction mitigation loan program. This past year, we only approved one facade application, which was just under $2,000. And then the rest of that commercial line item budget, we switched over to applying for the federal EDA grant. And so, yeah, I guess up for discussion on how much we want to put towards the facade program versus the construction mitigation loan program and balance that $17,000. Knowing that, I think over the last 5 years, we have not hit the $10,000 mark as part of the facade program.
I mean, I know that for the Chamber of Commerce, we were gonna, once we knew kind of where the program was at, and once we have estimates on the new community banners, we were gonna talk to you guys about if it would either fit within the facade improvement, or if it would be something else that we might consider cost sharing. All those like banners that go along like the posts or whatever need to be updated. So, I don't know, however that fits in, but I know that was something we wanted to visit about, in the
Do
company.
you have a price on that? I know we talked about it last month.
I think Matt was maybe gonna get it from Tom Trips at Davies, and I don't know that I've seen the number yet. But I just know that was,
Do you remember what it was last time?
no, 'cause it was before I was here.
Oh, sure, okay, it's been a while.
A lot.
Yeah.
I can't remember the number, but it was...
Couple $1,000, or?
Was it?
Was it a couple $1,000, or?
Oh, at least, yeah.
Yeah, and you were looking at getting some pictures, some new pictures for those too, weren't you, or how'd that go?
Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily on all of them, but just having some of the castle landmarks,
Sure.
if we can take the photos for that, not the water tower, the water center,
Yeah,
not necessarily any of the businesses.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I know as we talked about, Tom, you know, when we met and talked about the chamber's budget, that, I mean, I think we're interested in making sure, I mean, we'd love to see those spruced up, and especially with 57's construction, and it'd be great to get that out and kind of freshen things up a little bit, but, I mean, without knowing a number, it's hard to sort of designate money for that right up front.
Yep, no, I'm with you. I think, that was just one thing I was, that would potentially be, or, I don't know if it'd be a request through the facade improvement program, but it would be a commercial thing that we would have a request going through for.
Robert, you said it, but I forget. How much did we actually spend on facade improvement last year?
I don't know the last year number, or last year, 2021, less than $2,000.
So, can we leave it just, it's in the funds, can we just, right now you're saying it's $2,000 for the construction mitigation and it's $2,000 for the facade, can we just leave it in a lump sum, and if it comes forward, we can determine, instead of trying to designate it now, because then, we put it here, and now we want to bring it back here, can't we just approve it as we go, for which fund?
We could, just in operationalizing it.
Because we have a dollar amount that we're not going to go over.
Right, but it doesn't give me a goal to, for the construction mitigation, if we want to say $10,000, well, then we know we want to have all those dollars loaned out, right? And so then it gives me a goal to solicit for businesses as opposed to just like a lump sum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but we had a $10,000 in the facade, and we never hit that goal. I mean, is what I'm saying. It's whether you have the goal or not, we're not going out and pushing for it. We can push for it either way, and just make sure we're watching our numbers, and when it runs out, we stop. We just say, whoop, we've hit our goal for the year, no matter which program we put it in, and just let people know it's there. It's still in there. Then we ain't trying to designate it and then turn around and, now we want to move it back, and then,
Sure.
it's still a line item no matter how we do it.
So just keep it as a commercial programs line item, and as applications come in.
And we designate it as the board, as how it needs to go. It's just my opinion. You can take it how you guys want, but I just want to simplify it.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a problem. I mean, if that's what the board wants to do, I mean, we can move in that direction. Part of it was, I know Robert wanted to try and figure out what we actually had for the construction mitigation part of it. You know, you can look through there. I mean, we tried, I think Robert definitely tried to keep it simple. He did a good job of doing that, and
Sure.
Kind of took some of the goals that we had was for folks that might be impacted. I mean, the construction's planned really to start in May, and May and June will be the most impactful time period for the actual downtown.
Sure.
After that, I mean, the access will be pretty much completed as far as I know, hopefully. Knock on wood, weather dependent, all the other caveats to that, but.
Exactly.
So we're hoping that 2-month period would be the time period anybody would be impacted, but does that program look okay to you too? I guess that's the other question. Maybe you were gonna get to that, Robert?
Oh, yep, sure, I can lay out the terms of this program. So, given that we expect, 2 months to really be the major block, I capped it at $2,000 per business to be released, $1,000 per month over that period. 30 days post application approval, they'll start to make their repayments back at $100 per month. And eligible expenses are really lights on type of loan program, so rent, lease, mortgage payments, and utility payments, so not getting into inventory or anything else that comes along with that.
It's really similar to what we did when COVID first was happening. We had like the short-term business interruption
That's right.
loans.
It's pretty similar to that.
Pretty much modeled after that concept there, because something we'd actually talked about at that time was it might be a good model to look at for the 57 closure, so I think that makes sense.
Is there a plan in place as far as the marketing of the program? So we make sure everybody's aware of being able to use it,
Yeah,
potentially?
I'm gonna walk and go door to door.
Are you?
I do every few weeks anyway, so.
Okay.
Well, I guess some of you are local business people. I guess, is there the only question I had really was under the eligible loan expenses. Do you feel like anything else should be included under that eligible loan expenses, or if those are, I I mean, obviously, it's pretty straightforward. Do you include any kind of waging, costs or anything like that? If people see, less foot traffic, because, hair salons is one of the ones I think of, you still wanna keep your staff that you have on hand, but, you have to be able to pay them with foot traffic possibly impacted. Is that something we should even consider including or not?
Well,
Most of them don't have employees that are adjacent to the project.
Right.
They're self-employed.
Right. Well, I'm just asking, because I don't know.
I mean, looking at the eligibility, you need to be on or adjacent to it, so it doesn't include everybody on Main Street, right?
Well, I would
So how
put
far
Main
is
Street
the-
as adjacent too, so.
So the whole Main Street.
I mean, I
count all
would
of
certainly say the the main 2-block corridor
Yeah.
there.
but if you're giving them, per this, we're giving them, help with bills, rent, lease, if you did that, they would still have income to
They
pay
could
their
shift their
employees.
cash flow into their
All they'd
wages.
have
That's-
to
And
do
that's
is-
a good point, right?
So this would still cover definites, and then they could just,
I guess the issue would be, what if somebody doesn't have those, mortgage bills to pay? So if you own your building outright and you're, like you are self-employed, I mean, they wouldn't have
Okay.
that cost then to shift. I mean, because you're right, yeah, if you have a mortgage payment, then you could take the loan to help with that, and then use your cash flow to pay your employees or whatever, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
well,
and see
you
what
could
people
add,
thought.
you could add insurance cost in there then, the building insurance. That would, if they didn't have a payment, that would offset.
How are we verifying what they use the dollars for? Are we making them submit, like, bank statements or something?
I think our plan would be to have them submit the items they're using for justification.
Yeah. Because I guess I would probably just say operating costs. I mean, if somebody,
Your business is so different,
Mhm.
to pigeonhole what particular, if you need help with operating,
right, that to me is kind of the goal, is just, like you said, keep the lights on, but keeping the lights on can be a little different for everybody. Yeah, maybe insurance is a big deal for some, maybe,
How long is this project going to be?
It's just like 60 days. I think just keep it operating costs and keep it,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, I don't know if the size of the amount we're giving out is gonna warrant, like, it's gonna cost us more in staff, in your time to go through verifications.
I mean,
What happens if a business just, it's a 0% interest loan, and they say, well, we just want to buy some more inventory, right? That's an operating cost, but it's not necessarily a negative impact from the construction.
I guess I feel like there's bigger problems in life. I don't know.
Because technically, they could say it was for the rent payment and then just go by inventory anyways, and we don't know.
Sure.
So technically,
Right.
we're not gonna go there and verify what they spent it on, per se. We just wanna make sure that it's used in the best interest of their business. To keep
Well, I mean,
them-
it's up to you. I mean, it's pretty easy for me to say, hey, I know what their utility bills are, so that's something that I can pretty easily verify here at City Hall if we
Yep.
needed to. And it's not difficult for them to say, here's my mortgage statement from the month of, May and June.
Yep.
And then we've verified and justified their operating costs. I mean, I get your point. I guess I'm not as worried about somebody going out and buying a ton of, $1,000 worth of, hair product or something like that. I just don't think that's probably realistic, but I don't know. I mean, that's why we're running through this program now. I mean, to Janice's point, do we even want to offer a program at all? I mean, the feedback we've had, that I've seen has been, yes, we want to do something for the business community on Main Street. But if the EDA doesn't feel like it's a good use of funds, then, it's up to you guys and what you want to do with your money, so.
And not everybody's gonna apply for it.
I don't anticipate there'll be a lot of people that'll apply for it, but we want to provide this as an
Yes.
option for that one or two businesses that really does need the help.
So I still think we leave it like you got it for that.
pretty open-ended. I mean, it's more of an olive branch to say, hey, you're gonna be inconvenienced. Here's something that if it's really gonna put you in a pinch, they could get you a month or two of rent or whatever, but you still gotta pay it.
Right.
So they're saving the interest on that money for up to 2 years.
Right.
So, I would suspect we'll get 1 or 2 applications, if that.
Right. And that's kind of why we just leave it all in the one line item too. It's just, so.
So was the consensus to change the eligibility to just operating costs, or to leave those as is, the rent, mortgage, utility?
I guess I'd leave it as is, and then they'd have to show,
I do think adding like insurance, if there is that person who owns the building outright, that gives them one other option without opening the floodgates to anything.
Yeah, insurance.
Because I think insurance.
It is an expense.
It's easy to provide as a mortgage statement.
Mhm.
Sure.
Utilities,
Well, Rob will make some changes, and then, we'll start publicizing the program.
I know Janice thought it's 2 months, like.
Honestly,
You know,
I'm thinking
some businesses
like-
might be right on the edge, that might just help them. Might not, but if they are on the
But
edge.
that's the edge before the project, and that's not
I know.
what we're looking at. I'd rather have a celebration party at the end of the thing and invite.
Well, we can't spend the money on it.
I'm with, well, we've talked about that, though, actually, no, that's, and you're not wrong there either, actually, I had that conversation with the chamber, some of the chamber members as well. I mean, that is something we are looking for, I'm hoping in October we can do a street dance. I think that'd be huge, showcase what we've got. I've had success with the Main Street project before, where we did that, and, I mean, the engineering firm paid for most of it.
We have two
The
downtown
engineering
lots.
firm did, so I don't know if they'll do that this time, but, Brandon might not be willing to do that, but yeah, I think anytime we can showcase our downtown, we wanna do that, and put some money into that, so.
I prefer.
That's an option.
Yeah, the only reason I'm supporting doing this at all is because it gives us the answer that you inconvenienced me, what'd you do for me? Here you go. If it
Yes.
really
Right.
inconvenienced you that bad, and it puts you in a pickle,
Right.
you have an option. We're trying to help
It's
you
just
out
trying
we
to,
can.
and trying to keep
Instead of
business
saying,
happy.
you
and-
inconvenienced us, and you didn't even offer us an option. Here's your option. I suspect,
Very
little
minimal.
to
Exactly sure
none.
who is the you?
what's that?
Who is the you?
Well, a
We're
business,
talking Casson City or?
City.
we're
The city
talking
didn't do it,
MnDOT?
the city didn't do anything for us. Oh, whether it's a MnDOT project or a city project, it's.
the city still has to try to,
It's the mayor.
Right, it's still the mayor's fault.
We're just gonna take, when it's done, we're gonna take the kudos for the project.
yeah,
Sure, right,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah, right, hopefully.
that's the goal.
No, and there's probably a lot of truth to that, but, I mean, it's trying to provide something that.
It's an olive branch to say, hey, we understand you're being inconvenienced. Here's something we can do. If it's such an inconvenience that it's putting you behind the 8 ball for a month or two, here's an option. And I suspect very few people,
Yeah.
But it's
Well,
still a nice token.
people apply for the facade.
Exactly. And there was people that did facade programs that didn't even apply for it because
right,
They
the
didn't
facade
apply.
program is you get the money, you don't have to pay it back. This one is those
Still you
things
gotta pay it
only
back.
realize they have to pay it back.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it was just sign up and get $500, everybody would apply.
yes, so we wanna,
You could go up and down Main Street and get that.
yes.
It's just- so.
It's only two blocks on Main Street, it's not a block to the north or to the south, or,
I would count those as adjacent, right?
okay.
Everybody's gonna have access problems.
Yeah,
I mean,
any
we're talking
business.
like Bremer Bank or,
I don't think Bremer Bank would be,
I
I
don't think
don't think Bremer Bank would be affected by it, because they have access south
Still have
south of the 34 intersection, so.
the buildings there, Verizon and that building.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll have to
Yeah,
establish
that-
I mean, that's a
that
good
mall.
question, is establishing an eligible area.
Country Pleasures, I think, will be
Affected by it, yep.
I think as long as they have a good narrative on how it is impacting there,
Right. So,
then,
all right.
you know, we can leave it pretty open.
I'm in favor, I don't, there's gonna be like, especially like the real, kinda like the startup, foot traffic type businesses, like, they're gonna be impacted, they're probably at an early enough stage where this kind of thing is gonna make a difference to them, and it answers that question, what do you do? Which I think is, we have the money, it's not like it's in competition for some other really awesome use that we've come up with, so I think this is,
And with us leaving it all in one line item, we don't use it at the end, then we can just shift it and throw a $10,000 party.
there you go.
Buy all
All
the
right,
booze.
so so you got some guidance.
No, I think that's helpful, that gives us what we need, and,
So, next up, you have your regional commercial kitchen incubator.
I think you should take a vote on approval of those programs, so.
Oh, okay. Can we lump them both together, or do you want?
Move to approve the programs for 2022.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now we can move to your food impact
Yes. So the old Images building
More than
on Manorville Ave is up for sale right now. So I put together a concept for a shared commercial kitchen
trying to protect
that I think could be beneficial to the community. I've had some initial meetings with organizations like Green Seam, and I know some of the work that Smith is doing in the region. But there is not a large, sizable commercial kitchen space available in southeast Minnesota, really. So there's about 13,000 square foot in this building, and I've laid out kind of some key amenities. There's already a tenant in there. There's a potential retail space in the front, and some space available to do some conference room learning space and a retail-grade commercial kitchen attached with some programming. And so I just wanted to hear some feedback on this potential program. There's some high-level costs on the back. They're asking quite a bit of money for the building. They're on $749.
For a building?
It's been for sale for so many years.
Who's gonna buy it?
One of these organizations is kind of the conversations that we're having. Nobody's gonna pay $749, but that's what they've listed at right now.
Right.
You buy City Hall for $749.
I mean, if somebody's willing to come in and purchase a building and renovate it, we'll gladly support them, but I don't see the city wanting to put any money into
Well,
something.
that's not the ask. Actually, another,
You know what I'm saying, though?
huh?
Well, to say, I don't see the city having a problem supporting it, but,
Okay.
so what is that?
I mean, I think part of Robert, you can elucidate more, would be, let's say they did, one of these organizations or a couple of them get together, and Robert just had started sharing some details of this with me, and, they might be looking at a tax abatement or something like that too, where they'd be saying, okay, the current value is X, we're doing all these improvements, the new value is gonna be Y, can we look at a tax abatement or something like that to help pay for some of those improvements? That'd be where we might come in as a city EDA, or we might be looking at facade grants for new signage for it, or maybe some small loans for like kitchen, buying
Okay.
kitchen equipment or something like that. I don't think that, we're not looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars or anything like
Okay.
that from the city.
No, that's not the request of the EDA. I'm looking at, like, Smith, for example. This is a really big priority area for them, and they're able to finance projects like this and good grants as well. But I think for something like this to happen, right, all the stakeholders have to align, all the way from city government through private industry to make it happen. So, you're about to say something.
Oh, yeah, how much of parking space are gonna need, because I know with this project, they're losing parking space.
Yeah, they're actually not losing that many parking spots. We actually, helped Mr. Keller, the city engineer went through and did a redesign or, graphic redesign of his parking lot, where even with the road upgrade, he's only looking at maybe a loss of 2 or 3 spots, which, he does have spots on the north side of his lot too. They're restricted by the access by the lumberyard there, but, so I mean, all told, this is very preliminary, I think, where Robert's at with it, but I appreciate him taking a look and seeing a building that obviously isn't doing a lot for us right now.
Right.
To try and see what could be done there, so.
I mean, if we wanna, I guess I haven't been familiar with, like a demand for the commercial kitchen, but, I think there was a successful one in St. James, if I remember right, where they put it in and it seemed like people have made use of it, but, would it make sense to look at like the old misplaced Magnolia building instead, because they've got a commercial kitchen in there?
It's kinda small, though.
Right. But I mean, like, normally when you're doing these, you're not, like,
So,
There's,
having like thousands of people come.
right, there is one in Rochester too, and I don't know how big that one is. It's a shared work
okay.
space.
So one of the limiting factors for these growth stage companies is the lack of warehouse space in a lot of the commercial kitchens that are available. A lot of them are like in the basement of churches, right? So they can go there, they can make product, but they can't ship in a ton of flour or a ton of something. And so this is just an opportunity for that to be all on one site for them. And incubate those businesses. And there's quite a few startups that I know of that are like our growing Somali population. Folks are actually importing teff, which is like a flour type product. and producing the things that are unique to the Somali community. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think it'll fill up.
I think my opinion is if you can get these other organizations that are interested in doing it, that the city would be interested in
Working on it.
seeing where we could help. I mean, if we could get if those organizations feel they could acquire the property, make it into what they want to make it into, and make a business of it, that just helps the city in general, so.
Yeah.
I was just interested in perspectives on it. Sounds like nobody's negative on the project, so.
No, it's a great idea.
Anytime we can get a building that's sitting empty, filled, it's a good bonus. As long as it's cost effective.
Would there be enough water for that brewery down there?
That is a good question. I know they've looked at some Main Street buildings and like they're looking to expand. There's been some water line capacity issues, and I imagine that still exists for that warehouse as well. Not a...
Might be the time to take a look at it, though, because if they wanted outside the water line, they could do it with the...
With the road project, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
So that might be a
And
good,
there's already that
you know,
retail
they could go with
space up front.
they could go with a 2-inch line instead of a 1-inch, which might solve some of the water issues there.
Okay.
That's a really good point, Janice, because, yeah, I mean, I think that's where they...
We had called about getting beer bread,
Sure.
and we got to talking, and that's what he said. The problem, he said, we'd love to be on Main Street, but we don't have enough water.
Beer water lines in.
Well, you gotta tear everything up. I mean, that's what he'd be looking at. He'd be tearing up the sidewalk, and then he'd have to put the stuff, I mean, which he could totally do.
We need to do
but-
sidewalks anyway.
Don't disagree with you.
Start.
I'd like, let's just do Main Street.
We just
Mr.
got
Mayor's got a
done
plan, he's gonna redo the whole Main Street, gonna tear all the sidewalk out. I love this guy. He's stocking it up.
Just got done paying the assessment last year for that.
Yeah, he just got done saying, well, it's time for a new one.
Yeah.
You've already got in the budget. No, but that is a good point, where we're looking at this project already, it might be a good idea to see if, especially, and if you're gonna do the commercial kitchen anyways, you might wanna have that higher, water pressure volume anyway.
Yeah.
So,
There
no,
would
that's
certainly be space for tanks and stuff.
yeah.
And then they can occupy the retail space, yeah.
I could go in there. I didn't like beer, but I can see it.
No, we haven't spoken to any potential tenants or anything like that. This is just a SketchUp. And I think it needs to be sold to these organizations
Yep.
to have ownership first.
Don't know until you try.
One of these organizations I run, so we're on board.
Okay. All right. Do some good selling.
All right. Well, thank you, Robert. Next is other business.
So there is, including your package, you did have information on Mr. Schuete's development. So just informational for you, just to share with you. The city council approved the annexation of this property on the north side of Casson. It's a pretty substantial ad, and there, Mr. Schuete is looking at some development, some commercial development in the south part of that property there, but he's also looking at changing the zoning. This was all brought in as development holding. However, the council indicated that they were not necessarily opposed to seeing a zoning change, which I think, of course, in the fullness of time, we'd be looking at some changes with that, which is perfectly fine. This is his preliminary design. There are some issues that have to be worked out with the state on. So Mr. Schuete and his engineer are working with MnDOT to try and solve some of those access issues, but just wanted to let the EDA know that this is, coming up, and it's something that they should be aware of. Last night I was at the township board meeting, and they finalized the annexation of 16th Street West access. So now that parcel that's sort of on the northwest side is a county parcel, but the county did deed that 16th Street right-of-way to the city, so that's now going to be annexed, based off of next week's city council meeting, annexed into the city limits. So we have some issues there with cost overruns on the 16th Street extension, but hopefully we'll still be able to move forward with at least part of that project over the next year and a half. So, but we want to get this in your hands so you can see kind of what he's looking at, and he'll probably be coming in the future to talk to the EDA or ask for some support for some of his ideas as well, so.
Good. All right, items for February.
I will bring forward an annual report. I did have to take it off this agenda. Didn't have a chance to finish that.
The other thing I'd like to see in February is if we can get our goals list for the EDA goals for 2022. So, I don't know, maybe, Robert, we can get them a sheet just to send out to the members and, 1 to 3 goals. I mean, last year we had multifamily housing, we had, improve and preserve business, those kind of things. So we're just looking for if there's anything else that's not on our agenda right now as staff that the EDA is interested in bringing to the forefront. We know that we've kind of got a 57 project that's gonna take up a lot of time and kind of energy. This multifamily housing, we're gonna continue working on with them, obviously, but if there's anything else that we're not thinking of right now that you have, you say, hey, this would be interesting, we can kind of get it stirred up, so.
I didn't bring that forward at this meeting because we had revisited when I started back in July. So we talked about this at the August meeting, so we could just review those goals. Not sure if we need to do that again.
I'd like to see if there's anything new they've got for 2022.
Send out the current ones and then, so we can, and then we can add to them.
Yep.
Excuse me. That being it, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everybody.
You.
Should I turn that off? Forgot to turn it on.